Hi everyone, welcome to Friday Fun. Today we're starting out in the preserve, and the preserve is a great place to see hummingbirds, and that's our topic for today. We passed by one hummingbird as we came in through the gate, and that territory belongs to that hummingbird is this area over here. And then we're going to head over to another territory of a hummingbird, and you're going to see what it looks like. So I'm out in the preserve, and I'm here to show you a hummingbird's territory. This area is for the Allen's hummingbird, and the Allen's hummingbird always has a little bit of that rusty orangish color on it. And when you could see the throat, this one is a girl, but when you see the throat, it's a reddish orange, not so much a pink like our Anna's. So this is our Bladder Pod Bush, and the Bladder Pod Bush has wonderful flowers that are filled with nectar that the hummingbird loves. And you can see the little bladders hanging down. That's why we call it the bladder pod. Now, the area for this particular hummingbird starts here at the Bladder Pod Bush and goes all the way over to that small tree over there, and then across like a triangle to a bigger bush over there, and all the way back. So this hummingbird's territory is not huge, but this is the territory that he will protect, and he will not let any other boy hummingbirds in his territory. So I want to show you a closer look at the Bladder Pod flowers and how the hummingbird can use those flowers for nectar. I'm going to break off a little stem to pretend that this is my hummingbird beak. We're going to walk over here. Miss Susan's going to step out of the bushes, and we're going to see some of the flowers. So we have, these are the Bladder Pod flowers. And you can see here's the nice flower. Here's the little seed pod that's already starting. But let's pretend that this stick is the beak of the hummingbird, and he can go in the flower, use his long tongue, and drink up lots of nectar. So that's one of the reasons he really likes this plant, because it has a lot of nectar for him. We're going to walk over to the other two, and I'll show you why he likes them. So right on the little bush in front of us, it's actually another Bladder Pod bush, a different one, and he's just right at the very tip top of that little bush. It's more difficult to see because the bush and him sort of hide together. Let me get a little closer. Maybe I can point him out. Oh, when he gets his... If I do that, maybe he'll turn and look. No, he's not looking. Oh, there he goes. So here we are. This is an elderberry tree. The elderberry tree isn't doing too well, but it fell down a couple years ago, but it's hanging in there. It'll come back. And the hummingbird doesn't like it because it has delicious nectar flowers. The hummingbird likes it because it's kind of tall and empty at the top where it can perch, where it can sit and look around and watch for any other hummingbirds coming into its territory. So that's why it likes the elderberry. Lots of skinny little branches that fit its tiny little feet. So I wanted to show you the Anna's hummingbird. This is the boy, and you see that beautiful pink hood and throat and a little bit of green and gray. This is the one that owns that territory, and that's so fun. We also saw the female. The female doesn't have this pretty pink hood. She's more plain looking because she has to look like the nest. So this territory that starts here at this bush, and I'm going to run the whole thing to the other side, okay? And it goes to this bush, and there he is right there on top, and it goes to this bush, or this tree, and it goes all the way where we started with the first bladder pod. We walked into the center of the marsh. We're at the edge of the water, tried to find a nice quiet place for the story time. So I'm sitting on this log, and I have some things I want to tell you about hummingbirds. First of all, hummingbirds, and here's my little puppet. I have two little hummingbirds. So this is closer to the real size. There's some hummingbirds that are this big, but not the ones that live around here. And they have a long, skinny bill and an even longer tongue inside. They can flap their wings so fast that it makes the humming sound. And they're flapping. They also have voice sounds that they can make. They make little squeaky, chirpy noises. So these are my two hummingbird toys. I want to show you the kind of hummingbirds we have. We have the Anna's hummingbirds, and the Anna's have a beautiful pink color hood on their head. It's just so bright and beautiful, and in the right sunlight, it looks exactly that color. And if you look at the rest of their body, there's some green and gray, but there's no orange or dusty brown orange at all. The other one that we have is called the Allen's hummingbird. And the Allen's hummingbird always has some of this orangish gray color on it somewhere. And you can see that they're pretty much got the same length on their bill. Allen's hummingbird is just a tiny bit bigger than this one. They both drink a lot of nectar, and like all hummingbirds, they eat a lot of bugs. They catch like little gnats and small flying insects and maybe some ants and things that they can pick. They'll pick a spider right out of his own web. Sometimes they'll take his prize right out of his web. If he caught something else, they might steal it. They're pretty tricky. Hummingbirds can fly like acrobats. They can fly straight forward, straight up, backwards, upside down, even in a loop. They can do so many things that most birds can't. And so quickly. They're small, but they have a mighty appetite. So more than half of their diet is bugs, and the rest is flower nectar, that wonderful, sweet liquid that's inside of the nice flowers that they like. And we're going to look a little more at flowers a little bit later. So we have Anna's and Allen's, and this one is a girl. The boy would have a reddish orange throat color. We call it a gorget if it was the boy. Now we're going to talk a little bit about their nests and how they make them. I have some hummingbird nests here, and I wanted to show you. Each one is just a little bit different. And you can see that they're little bits of grasses and little bits of fragments of plants. And the fluffy stuff in the middle is the fluffy stuff from seeds, the seed fluff or the down. And you can see this one's been a little bit damaged, but there's also little chips of things on the outside. Sometimes they use lichen, and in this one they used a little bit of like paper bark. And this makes the nest very difficult to see when it's in a tree. So it's nicely camouflaged. Now the hummingbird always lays 2 little white eggs, never 3 and never 4, just 2. And that's how they do their nesting. So I have this book today, and it's called About Hummingbirds. Let's have a look. This is about different kinds of hummingbirds, not only the kinds we have here. Hummingbirds are small birds that get food from flowers. Anytime you see a tube flower, one with a nice nectar tube to hold that sweet nectar, that's the one they're going to like. Now see, in this picture, we have a ruby-throated hummingbird, and there's the boy with a nice red throat, and here's the girl. She does not have the red throat. She wants to be not so fancy and flashy that others can find her nest. They have sharp, narrow bills with very long tongues that help them reach into the blossoms for nectar. And you can see some of them. There's that long tongue. Look at this one. This one's crazy. We don't have any like that around here. Some of them are a little bit shorter. Hummingbirds also hunt and eat small insects and spiders. See, he's going to catch that little fly right out of the air. More than half of their diet. They eat a lot of bugs. They often fight over food. So when it's his territory and these are the flowers he's protecting, he's going to fight off the other hummingbirds. That's a really important lesson that hummingbirds have to learn when they're young, is how to fight. Hummingbirds are the only birds that fly forward, backward, sideways, and even upside down. They can do a lot of things. And this is a hummingbird feeder. Maybe you've seen one. If you fill it with sugar water, they can drink it because that's what nectar is, sugar water. They can easily hover in one place. So what does hover mean? Hover means they flap their wings and it's like they're floating without going frontwards, backwards, up or down. They're staying in one place. Most hummingbirds cannot walk. Their feet are used for perching or just grabbing onto a branch. So they can't really walk, but those tiny little feet hold on tight. All hummingbirds are small, and many of them are tiny. So this one is called a bee hummingbird. We don't have that around here, and they're only about that big. This one is called a giant hummingbird, and it's bigger than a sparrow. And again, we don't have that one around here. Most male hummingbirds have bright, shiny feathers that seem to change color in the different light. See these nice tube flowers filled with nectar. Female hummingbirds usually have duller colored feathers. This helps them hide as they sit on their nests. So they don't want to be too bright and shiny because they don't want anyone to find their eggs or their babies. Mother hummingbird builds a nest from materials such as twigs, leaves, down from plants, moss, lichen, and spider webs. They're really strong. Each hummingbird lays 2 small white eggs and raises the chicks with no help from the father. She wants the dad to be nowhere near her nest because his bright, shiny colors might attract a predator. Larger animals sometimes hunt for hummingbirds' nests and eat the eggs or the chicks. Another bird might do that, or maybe a squirrel or a rat. They might do that. Adult hummingbirds are usually fast enough to escape predators. Ooh, look at that snake was thinking he'd get a hummingbird. I think the one thing that can get hummingbirds sometimes are cats. I recommend you keep your cats inside. Hummingbirds live in different habitats. So some hummingbirds live in the desert, some live in like a marshy area, some in the tropical, and some close to the mountains. Some hummingbirds live in one area all year long. And that's true for our Allens and our Annas. They don't have to go anywhere. They stay here. So I have a Allen's hummingbird, Mrs. Allen's hummingbird, that lives in my garden, and she has for many years. And she has usually 2 or 3 nests every year, 2 or 3 batches of eggs. Others migrate long distances as the seasons change. We talked about migration. They go far. It is important to protect hummingbirds and the places where they live. So if you want to attract hummingbirds to your house, I suggest you plant some nectar flowers. That will always attract hummingbirds. And then this tells a little bit more about the book. So we learned a lot of things about hummingbirds, and let's look at the nest again. Why do you think it's important that they use spider webs? Well, because as the babies grow, the nest can actually stretch and accommodate the bigger babies. And spider webs do that quite nicely. I have one more book, and this one's a fun book, and it's called Little Green. I see you out there, Little Green. And there's a little boy, and he's painting. Let's see what he's painting. In the flowers and between, we just got a honeybee. I can't close the book on the honeybee. This is not a good place for you to land. Thank you. Zipping round and round and round. Look at that hummingbird go. Oh, and look at those beautiful nectar flowers. Let me get a drink. Jigging, jagging, down, up and down. Look at that. They can do so many tricky things with the way they can fly. Dip, dip, dipping, sip, sip, sipping, even getting a little bit of water. Looping in a curly cue. Little green, I still see you. The boy is still painting. Going, coming, softly humming. Stopping, starting, dashing, darting. Zigging, zagging, everywhere. They're always moving quite quickly. Hovering up in the air. Coming for a closer view. I wonder if you see me too. Well, I've been busy watching you and painting how you flew and flew. So he did ziggy zags and curly cues and all kinds of things the way the hummingbird flew. And his question is, the hummingbird watching him too? Absolutely. They have excellent vision. The hummingbird was probably watching him the whole time. So there's some things about hummingbirds that are pretty cool. And there's one more thing that I want to show you, and that's how they do their courtship. And courtship is another way of flirting or dating, trying to attract a mate. And it's the boy's job to attract the female. And the way he does it is by a display of fancy, fancy flying. So let's start with the Anna's hummingbird. And the Anna's hummingbird does it like this. I'm going to use my little puppet to show you. So if we have Mrs. Anna's perched right here, or maybe she's getting a little nectar from a flower. I wonder if I can make that stay. Oh, good. And Mr. Anna sees her. He's going to fly right up to her and hover right in front of her until she notices him. Then he's going to fly way up in the sky, straight up. You can't hardly see him anymore. And then he's going to turn down and whoop, he's going to swoop right by her and make a popping noise. And then, if that didn't impress her, he's going to do it again. Look at me, look at me, look at me. It swoops down really fast. And if she's impressed, then maybe she might accept him for her husband. Now I'm going to show you what the Allen's hummingbird does, and it's a little bit different. So this is actually Mrs. Allen's. Let's see if we can get her to stay in our tree and pretend that this is Mr. Allen's. And the way that he tries to attract her or tries to get her to be his wife is he makes a smile. And it's a big smile. He goes, maybe 7, 8 times. He's making the smile. And then on one of them, he goes, and then he comes down. He makes a little puppy noise with his tail. So if you see a hummingbird that's doing this smile, this is an Allen's hummingbird. Look carefully, there's a female nearby. You might be sitting still, so you might have difficulty finding her. And if you see a hummingbird that just goes straight up without doing the smile, then you know it's the Anna's. And that's fun to watch. And this time of year, there's a lot of courtship going on, so check around in your neighborhood because you might see it happen. So I wanted to finish our hummingbird program with some flowers that you could plant at home that would attract hummingbirds.
But first I want to show you a little bit of the nectar. And if we look inside this flower, the sunflower, we can see the little shiny part. And that's the nectar in the flower. Flat flowers like this one are really best for butterflies. And bees and wasps and other flies like the flat flowers. Hummingbirds prefer flowers with tubes, and hummingbirds prefer flowers that are red. Let's see if we can find some of those.
And hummingbirds love red flowers. They also love purple flowers. And they have very, very long nectar tubes. And inside is a delicious drop of nectar. So they'll take that long beak, dip it down inside, all the way in, and their long tongue will go, lick it up, suck it up. And you can see that there's a lot of, this is called a Catalina Snapdragon, and you can see there's a lot of nectar flowers on this one. There's a couple more I want to show you, but we're going to walk a little bit around the corner. Okay. This one is a purple sage, and they have really lovely tubes too. Let me pull one out and show you. See that long nectar tube? Right at the end is a little white tip, and on that little white tip, if you suck on it, you get a delicious, just a little teeny tiny bit of nectar. So these are great for hummingbirds, these little tubes. So I found another nice little nectar tube. These yellow flowers are a plant called a gooseberry. It also makes little berries. Nice little nectar tubes for that long bill to go inside and drink up the nectar. So we have an Anna's hummingbird, and this territory belongs to him. And no wonder, look at all the nectar flowers. There he goes. First of all, we have an agave blooming, and look at these great big flowers. And those nectar wells are so filled with nectar. There's going to be plenty and plenty to eat for the hummingbird in there. And then the little Baja fairy dusters. This little flower has so much nectar. I grow these at home, and they're so sweet. The squirrels will actually eat the whole flower because they taste delicious. So this one with all the red flowers, and of course we know the hummingbirds like the red flowers, would be a great plant to plant at home if you want to get some hummingbirds around your house. Thank you for joining us for Friday Fun. Hope you see some hummingbirds. Bye.